The marble halls of the Supreme Court, hallowed by centuries of justice, trembled with unprecedented tension. Chief Justice John Roberts, the stoic guardian of America's highest court for nearly 2 decades, sat frozen behind the bench, his piercing intellect rendered mute. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, a legal titan from Texas, unleashed what scholars would later hail as the most searing constitutional argument in modern history. What began as a routine judicial review exploded into a cataclysmic dismantling of judicial authority, as Crockett unveiled evidence so damning it forced Roberts into a staggering $200 million settlement. The moment she opened her briefcase and drew forth a single document, the air shifted, the weight of history pressing down. Roberts, renowned for his unyielding composure, was struck speechless for the first time in his illustrious career, his legacy teetering on the brink of ruin. This is the electrifying saga of how a young Democratic Congresswoman outwitted the Supreme Court's elite, delivering a victory that will reshape American jurisprudence forever. Before we plunge into this seismic legal showdown, hit that like button and subscribe to witness the most shocking political reckonings unfold. The constitutional crisis that erupted in those sacred halls exposed decades of judicial betrayal, proving that even the nation's highest court bows to brilliant strategy and irrefutable truth. John Roberts had sculpted a towering reputation as the steady hand steering the Supreme Court through turbulent times. Appointed by President George W. Bush in 2005, he had spent 18 years crafting a legacy as a principled conservative, occasionally stunning observers with moderate stances. His Harvard law pedigree and experience as a Supreme Court advocate made him seem invincible in legal arenas. Roberts championed institutional integrity, often speaking of shielding the court from political assaults. He had weathered storms over rulings on health care, voting rights, and reproductive freedoms, insisting the court stood above partisan fray. His measured responses and unflappable demeanor were the stuff of legend among legal minds who watched him navigate the era's most divisive cases. Yet, beneath this polished facade lurked a sinister pattern, unnoticed by most scholars and journalists. Roberts's decisions consistently favored certain corporate interests, despite his public vows of neutrality. His financial disclosures, though technically compliant, hid conflicts that would soon face a devastating reckoning. Jasmine Crockett embodied the establishment's deepest fears, a brilliant attorney whose University of Houston law degree belied a mind sharper than most. At 43, she had become one of Congress's most formidable legal forces, her civil rights background forging her into a warrior against entrenched power. Her razor-sharp questioning in congressional hearings left colleagues awestruck as she dismantled witnesses with surgical precision, wielding their own words and precedents like a blade. Unlike peers reliant on staff scripts, Crockett crafted her own arguments, honed in courtrooms against seasoned adversaries. Her Texas district had sent her to Washington with a mandate to root out corruption, no matter the title or tradition. When whispers of Supreme Court misconduct surfaced, Crockett saw her chance to fulfill that vow, her resolve burning to hold even the highest powers accountable. The case igniting this clash seemed mundane, a challenge to federal election laws by voting rights advocates, alleging constitutional violations. It promised routine oral arguments and a standard ruling. But Crockett had been conducting a clandestine investigation, her civil rights instincts leading her to unearth systemic judicial patterns tied to financial interests. Her findings formed the bedrock of a challenge that would rattle the federal judiciary to its core. The stakes were colossal. If Crockett's allegations held, they would unveil corruption dwarfing past scandals, potentially invalidating years of court decisions. For Roberts, the threat was existential. His legacy and the court's credibility, painstakingly built, hung in the balance. The confrontation erupted during a congressional oversight hearing on judicial administration, where Roberts expected polite queries about budgets and caseloads. He entered the hearing room with his trademark confidence, flanked by court staff, ready for a perfunctory discussion of constitutional mechanics. Crockett, strategically positioned on the House Judiciary Committee, had orchestrated this moment as her battlefield. While colleagues posed predictable questions, she sat in silence, her notes a blueprint for the legal earthquake she was about to unleash. Her serene demeanor masked the fury of justice she carried within. The first tremors came when Crockett posed deceptively simple questions about judicial ethics, probing Roberts's grasp of recusal and conflict rules. He answered with practiced ease, citing precedents that had governed judges for decades, unaware each response was being weaponized against him. As her questions sharpened, zeroing in on specific cases where Roberts penned majority opinions, unease crept into the room. She asked about his decision-making, his consideration of legal factors, her tone probing yet measured. Roberts maintained his composure, explaining constitutional logic, but seasoned court watchers sensed a shift. Crockett wasn't fishing. She was weaving a deliberate tapestry, linking seemingly unrelated rulings with surgical intent. Her questions betrayed a mastery of court procedures that stunned even veteran observers, revealing insights into deliberations few outsiders grasped. Roberts's discomfort grew as Crockett delved into case preparation and consultations, his answers turning cautious, his voice tighter. The room's atmosphere crackled, committee members realizing they were witnessing an unprecedented clash. The turning point arrived when Crockett pivoted to Roberts's finances, her questions piercing his investment portfolios and ties to court litigants. He deflected, touting compliance with disclosure rules, but Crockett's preparation was relentless. She cited specific investments, undisclosed connections to parties benefiting from his rulings, exposing a pattern of coordination no coincidence could explain. Timelines flashed on screens, correlating his financial moves with court decisions, each revelation a hammer blow to his credibility. Roberts's composure fractured, his responses defensive, his evasions stark. Legal scholars in the gallery watched, jaws slack, as Crockett delivered a masterclass in strategy. She unveiled evidence of meetings, communications, and transactions that shattered Roberts's ethical facade, revealing a jurist who had betrayed the standards he preached. When he invoked judicial independence and separation of powers, his tone dripped with arrogance, as if untouchable. Crockett's retort was a thunderclap. With icy precision, she dismantled his defense, explaining that judicial independence was no shield for corruption. Her constitutional analysis was so airtight that even Republican members nodded, spellbound. Roberts's attempt to hide behind institutional armor collapsed, exposing a man who believed himself above the law. The hearing's electric tension peaked when Crockett reached into her briefcase, the room falling deathly silent. She extracted a manila folder, her voice steady but laced with righteous fury. "This document," she declared, "proves beyond doubt that Chief Justice Roberts violated his oath and betrayed the public trust." It was a forensic financial analysis, tracing money flows from Roberts's accounts to entities tied to court cases. The report revealed offshore accounts, shell companies, and financial maneuvers designed to conceal conflicts, each move timed with pending cases and favorable rulings. As Crockett read, Roberts's face drained of color, his hands trembling. The evidence was a guillotine, slicing through his assumptions of secrecy. Case by case, Crockett exposed Roberts's deciding votes benefiting his interests, his failure to recuse a clear ethical breach. The pattern was undeniable, leaving no room for excuses. Roberts's attempts to challenge the document's authenticity crumbled as Crockett produced independent verifications. His claims of legality faltered against her citations of ethical codes and constitutional mandates. For the first time, the man who had dominated court arguments, authored landmark opinions, and been lauded as a legal giant was rendered speechless, his stammering responses a stark contrast to his mythic reputation. Crockett pressed her advantage, her questions a relentless tide, anticipating every defense and closing every escape. The hearing's climax came when she announced not just exposure, but action. "I'm prepared to file charges with civil and criminal penalties," she declared, unveiling a $200 million lawsuit for the damage Roberts' corruption inflicted on democracy. The sum, calculated to reflect his ill-gotten gains and systemic harm, was a legal sledgehammer. Roberts' team, watching in horror, knew the evidence ensured her victory in court. His desperate dismissals of the lawsuit, citing judicial immunity, were shredded as Crockett proved his actions constituted fraud and conspiracy, far beyond protected conduct. In a final gut-wrenching moment, Crockett offered Roberts a choice that would define his legacy: settle privately with a $200 million fine, resign immediately, and cooperate with judicial misconduct probes, or face a public trial exposing even darker secrets. The settlement's terms, financial oversight, public admission of guilt, and cooperation, were a masterstroke, balancing accountability with institutional preservation. Roberts' silence, his failure to refute her, was an admission of defeat. Requesting time to consider, he left the room a shadow of the titan who had entered, his power shattered. Within minutes, news outlets blazed with footage of Roberts' collapse under Crockett's relentless questioning. The image of the Chief Justice, pale and speechless, became a symbol of justice reaching the untouchable. Social media erupted. Crockett exposes Roberts trending globally. Clips of her document reveal amassing millions of views. Legal scholars, stunned, called it a singular dismantling of a Chief Justice's credibility. Cable networks scrapped schedules, offering wall-to-wall coverage, with scholars dissecting the crisis's impact on democracy. International media hailed it as proof of America's capacity for self-correction, noting few democracies would confront such corruption so boldly. Democratic leaders demanded sweeping judicial probes, while Republican responses split. Some backed accountability, others downplayed Roberts' sins, exposing party fault lines. Progressive activists, galvanized, saw Crockett's triumph as a blueprint for challenging power. Public trust in the judiciary plummeted, polls showing shock at the court's betrayal. Behind closed doors, Roberts' team negotiated the settlement, the evidence's weight leaving no choice. The $200 million, his resignation, and cooperation were finalized after tense days, a total vindication of Crockett's strategy. Her victory sparked historic judicial reforms. Stricter disclosures, expanded recusals, and independent oversight passed with bipartisan support. Scholars dubbed the Roberts case a constitutional watershed, akin to Watergate, taught in law schools as a model of accountability. Crockett's techniques became academic gospel, her oversight approach adopted by legislators nationwide. Globally, her achievement was lauded as evidence of democratic resilience, her legal acumen a beacon for reform. Crockett's star soared, her party viewing her as a transformative force. Legal awards poured in, and speculation swirled about higher office or judicial roles. Her triumph was more than one man's downfall. It was a testament to democracy's power when courage and expertise converge. The reforms she inspired restored faith in justice, proving no one is above the law when faced with undeniable truth. If this saga of brilliance and accountability gripped you, like, subscribe, and share. Tell us in the comments what corruption cases deserve Crockett's relentless scrutiny next.